Hi guys, welcome back to Oldtimer Garage. So this is a second video of the new project. If you haven't watched the presentation of this project yet, check the link in the description of this video. So in this video I'm gonna restart these 2CV, and the first thing I need to do is just get rid of everything that's in the way. A lot of air conducts loose in there, and I also need to put a new coil and high tension cables, and of course a new battery. There's no air cleaner on this car. Well, it is somewhere, but it's not fitted on the car just yet, which is gonna make my job a bit easier today. So the first thing to do for now is to put the new coil in it. This yellow coil is not the original Citroen coil. First of all, because this car is fitted with an electronic ignition, which requires a different type of coil. If I remember well, these yellow coils are the Highlighter Vitson type, which for whatever reason, I don't really know why they're called Highlighter Vitson. Maybe they're fitted on these bikes. Maybe some of you can let me know in the comments. Anyway, I know they're quite good for the 2CVs, and a lot of them here in the UK are fitted with them. Then when I restart a new car, or a car that hasn't run for a while, I always like to change the high tension cables as well, because they tend to become a bit porous over time, and so sometimes that can cause problems. The battery also needed to be fixed, and this one is an old one, but the main problem was coming from the battery compartment that wasn't properly fixed. For now the coil will only be kept in place by a tie wrap, but this will be fixed later on. I just don't want it to fall into the running engine if I ever manage to make it run today. Next I want to see underneath the state of the fuel line. Usually when I restart an old car like that, I always prefer to start it from a fresh can of gas. But in this case my friend wanted to see if there was any fuel left in the tank. I wanted to double check if this car was fitted with the new version of the or new generation of the fuel tanks, which were in plastic, as opposed to the old ones that were metallic, and their particularity was that they were fitted with a screw at the bottom so that you could empty the old fuel, but this one is a plastic one, so that was out of the question. So in this case, to test if you still have fuel in the tank, you disconnect the fuel line on the carburetor and blow in it, and you just have to open the tap of the fuel tank and listen if you can hear bubbles coming in. In this case there wasn't anything left, so it was safe to put the fresh petrol in it. In the meantime, I take advantage to for checking the brake fluid level. Then it's time to try again. But when I try to put the ignition on, I don't get anything, nothing at all. I still have the ignition on, but when I try to start the starter motor, it doesn't do anything. So my thinking was that it was probably because the battery was too weak. So I took my car, and the idea was to put the jump cables on so that it would give it some more juice and see if it was helping the starter motor to crank it over. I'll save you the pain of watching how to put jump cables on. I'm pretty sure all of you already know how to do that. And now that the cables are connected, it's time to try again and see if it works. And actually it does crank the engine over, but to be honest, it's not going as fast as would expect from a car that's already connected to another running car. So the reason for that at that moment I thought was maybe because the cylinder heads of this engine have been redone. Maybe the compressions were high, but that was unlikely. So my second thoughts were that because this engine had been stopped for quite a while, maybe the pistons were a bit stuck in there. So the idea was to pour some oil mixed with WD-40 straight into the cylinders and see if that would help. So in order to do that, I'll take the spark plugs off and pour the oil straight in there and just crank the engine over without the spark plugs. I take advantage of taking the spark plugs out to check how good they are, but actually they're brand new. I didn't know that, but they're both brand new, so everything's perfect. So now it's time to pour the oil mixed with the WD-40 into the cylinders via the spark plugs holes, and just crank the engine over again. And when I tried this time, I didn't get anything, just this clack you heard, which I thought was because I disconnected the jump cables, but actually I started the car again and reconnected the jump cables and try again, but as you will be able to see, it didn't change anything. So that was a new problem I needed to fix. That was definitely coming from a connection problem, electrical connection problem, but which one I didn't know at that time. I first thought that it was on the jump cables because my battery on the 2CV was pretty much flat. So I checked that first, and as you can see, still nothing. But after a while of trying, the ignition came back on and I could crank the engine over without really understanding why, but I just took advantage of that and cranked it over for now. I'll check this problem later on. As you can hear as well, sometimes when I start the starter motor, there is this weird noise, and that is because the starter motor is not launching properly. There is a cog on it that is launched into the flywheel thanks to an electromagnetic system. I can't remember the name in English, sorry. And it doesn't seem to work properly on this one, so I will have to dismantle it completely and restore it. But for now, after a few trials, it works, so it will be enough to restart the car. But if you wonder why this starter motor does this weird noise from time to time, that's the reason why. So now that we've cranked the engine over for quite some time without the spark plugs, and the oil has been able to go through all the cylinders, it's time to put the spark plugs back on and see if it helps. I put a couple of connections back together at the same time and finishes to tighten the two spark plugs. Put the two high tension cables back on the spark plugs, and it should be okay to try again. This time I'll put just a little bit of petrol straight into the carburetor. See if it helps, because the fuel line is full of air and the fuel pump doesn't pump air very well. So by putting some petrol straight into the carburetor, it should help start the car, and with the engine running, then the fuel pump being mechanical, it should help getting the fuel to the fuel pump first and then to the carburetor. And there you go. The smoke comes from the oil that I put in the cylinders. And now it won't start again because it burnt all the petrol that I had put in the carburetor, and the petrol from the fuel tank didn't have time to arrive all the way to the fuel pump. So now we need to try and see if by just cranking the engine over, the fuel pump pumps fuel or still air. But again, I'm having this problem with the connections. Still nothing. I think the problem is coming from the main cable going from the positive at the battery to the starter motor. So I need to take this cable off, and the cable that's underneath it on the same connection, which goes into the main electrical harness, and see what's causing the problem, because I'm pretty sure it's coming from there. So I took everything off and cleaned everything with a wire brush, and then put everything back together. But I'll save you pain of watching that as well, because there's nothing interesting in there. So let's see if it works better now. And this time you can see that the fuel pump is actually pumping fuel and not air anymore. We had left the fuel pipe disconnected to see if the fuel was coming. Right, so now it's working. I can take the jump cables off. And it's time to see if it works. But actually this engine was going too fast for me and I didn't really understand why, so just before driving it I went back under the hood and had a look. That's when I realized that actually there was a spring that was missing on the accelerator cable, and this is why the engine was running so fast. So that was a quick fix anyway. Just needed to find a spare spring somewhere and put it back in place. While my friend went to find the spring, there was something that wasn't quite right to me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was definitely something not right. So I went back to see if I could put my finger on it. I couldn't say what it was, but something was worrying me. And after a few seconds I realized that actually there was fuel leaking on the hot engine. So I went to stop the car, and that's when I realized that there was a ring missing on the fuel pipe going onto the carburetor. So that was another quick fix. I just needed to replace it, and after that it should be okay. Next question was the a few minutes the engine had been running enough to recharge the battery, or would I have to bring my car back again and put the jump cables back? Only one way to find out. Still the same problem with the starter motor. and the engine starts, so everything is okay. And now it runs at the speed it should run. I don't like hearing engine revving up like crazy. Now it's the best time, I think, when you restart an old car, when you can actually make it drive for the very first time in a long time. So let's see what it does. I'll test the brakes a few times before really starting driving, just in case, but everything is fine on this side too. And the gear change pretty well. As I said before, the clutch is actually about only 10,000 miles or something like that, so it's perfect. At the moment the car is not taxed nor insured, so I can't take it on the road, but as soon as I get it home, then I will do that, if it keeps running the way it does at the moment. So I take advantage to check all the electric equipment, indicators, wipers and all the rest of it, and everything works actually. So not a bad day. Now it's time to put the car back at the back of the driveway, and we're going to be able to call it a day. As you can see, the front wing is in quite a bad shape. I'm probably going to replace it altogether. I could restore it, but it would take a long time, and I would need to weld a few bits and pieces, and I don't have my welder here, so would probably have to buy another one, and then a grinder as well, because I don't have it here. I've got pretty much all my power tools in my workshop in France, so here I would have to borrow it from someone, and I couldn't do it where the car is at the moment, and I couldn't do it where I live at the moment either, because of the neighbors, so it would be more of a problem than anything else. But for now I'm quite happy with the way this car runs. It's probably even better than what I was expecting. The bodywork is in a bad shape, to say the least, but that's not a real problem. It's easy to solve. It takes quite a lot of time, but it's easy to solve. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, if you did, please give me a thumbs up button. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. And don't forget to click on the bell button as well, so that you get notified next time I upload a video. And for the time being, stay tuned and drive safe.